Feeling like I'm fresh out the water, put that on my daughter, I'm dripping Mystique. Pin to the pad of my author and marathon jogger, been running for weeks. Yeah, I tell no lies, my eyes on the prize, you lose by choosing to blink. I found a treasure by taking on pressure and pushing myself to the brink. Looked in the mirror to tell me that I'ma be wealthy, I said I concur.
What's going on? I'm Bobby J from City Chapters. This is our podcast. We're on chapter 10 with Brennon Poynor. He's the owner of Spokast, and he handles City Chapters podcast production, and he owns this studio where we've been recording. So it only makes sense to have him on because he's been behind the scenes this whole time with us and making my vision come to life with this podcast. So I want to help promote his business and how you can start your own podcast as well if that's something you're interested in, because Brennon makes it seamless and easy. And it's been a major blessing for me to work with him because I've had this idea for this podcast for a while, but it was really hard to do on my own. And like I said, Brennon makes it seamless. It's easy. I show up, I do my thing, and he handles and gets me the files, and it's all done professional. Sounds great. So what's up, Brennon?
What's up? How's it going, Bobby? This is a dream come true, or a daydream come true, at least. I was thinking about this. I'm like, maybe someday I'll be on City Chapters. I know we talked about it, but now it's happening, and I'm excited to be a guest. This is actually very difficult for me because I'm not usually guest on podcasts. I'm usually hosting them or leading them, and I feel like I might end up taking on over, but don't let me do that.
Well, man, we're just gonna have an easy conversation.
Perfect.
You know? So yeah, what's your quick backstory? Where were you born, raised, all those kinds of things?
Born in Peoria, Illinois, home of Caterpillar. But my family, my dad moved around a lot when we were younger. He was a chemical engineer, and he moved around from Illinois to St. Louis, Chicago, Nashville, and then ended up here in Spokane, Washington in 1990 to work at Kaiser Aluminum to help kind of manage part of their plant. And so I've been in Spokane on the north side, went to Colbert Elementary, went to Meade Middle, and then went to Mount Spokane High School, graduated from there in 2002. And so, yeah, I would consider myself an original this is my home. This is like where I'm from, but I'm a transplant technically, but I feel like was born and raised here. So, but it's a lie if I tell people that, but
you were raised here.
Yeah, I was raised here.
Say born, but yeah.
But yeah, it's not, early on, I was really into running and cross country. Like high school, that's what I was mainly doing in high school, and met my wife at the end of my senior year at Mount Spokane, and really we just hit it off. And
how did you guys meet?
We actually met at a debate tournament. In debate, there's two sides of debate. There's the debating side, and then there's like the dramatic side. Mm-hmm. And I was on the dramatic side. I did like a dual interpretation. And anyways, had gone over there. She went to Ferris High School and I went to Mount Spokane, but we went on the same charter bus. And we met at a hotel, and we kind of just hung out one night and stayed up till like 2:00 in the morning talking all night, and just really hit it off. And she was actually the first girl I dated. And then, very long story short, like 4 years later in 2005, 3 years later, we were married. So we've been married 17 years now. So it's been
You feel like that was like a soulmate situation?
I feel that way. Like I've known a lot of people who've gotten married super young and they're divorced now.
Of course,
and
yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, and I would say like we've had a pretty stable relationship over the last 17 years. Like it's been I would say my relationship with my wife has been like the easiest thing in my life. Like it's never been,
that's amazing.
Never been very complicated or difficult. Like she's very easy to love, and she's an amazing woman. When I met her when I was 18, she was like, I'm going to go to college and become an accountant. And not many high schoolers like dream is to become an accountant, but that was her dream. And she became an accountant, got her CPA license, and yeah, she just did it and just went for it. And she's totally an inspiration to me of just being so focused on what you want to become and then doing it. And now she has a really good job. She works for a local paper company. It's called Clearwater Paper, but yeah, she doesn't even really do accounting anymore. She does more like business. I don't really know. I do not know what my wife does. She looks at spreadsheets a lot. I know that. And does a lot of project management. I think that's kind of what she does.
Right.
But she's an amazing woman, and I would definitely not be who I am without her. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you guys have spent most of your life together.
yeah.
That's pretty wild to meet your other half at such a young age, and it, like you said, be one of the easiest things in your life. That's a major blessing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know relationships that deeply. I've never been past a relationship past a few years, so that's another world. But the ones that I have seen, it doesn't seem like it's that easy. So to hear that is that way for you, that's pretty sweet, man.
Well, we didn't have kids super early either. Like we got married in 2005, and we didn't have our kids until 10 years later. After, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary when she was about 6 months pregnant. And so we really had 10 years of our life where we got to go do what we wanted to do. We got to go, hang out with our friends when we wanted to hang out with them. We traveled. During that time of my life, I was super confused, with work and what I was going to do. When we first met, I had never worked a real job in my life. And I had gone bouncing around from job. I worked at Hot Dog on a Stick. I worked at Red Robin. I worked on a landscaping company for a couple summers. And when I got married, I was like, I need to have a job that's stable and can provide for my wife and can give us insurance. And so I actually went and worked at a local manufacturing plant that's no longer here called Flexcell. It was an office manufacturing company, and I made cubicle walls for a living. And I worked on an assembly line for 3 years, and I was young and this, it was easy work because it was just you just work on an assembly line making these cubicle walls. But it was, in that time, I was like, I hate this. And as soon as she got out of college, I was like, I need to go back. I need to discover what I'm going to do, because I can't be in manufacturing my whole life.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So what did you do?
Well, and when I was doing manufacturing, I actually did they had these breakout sessions where they took people from the assembly lines and they had them go work with management and help them make the process of what we were doing on the assembly lines easier. And so I went and did this 3-month long project and got really involved in that, but was doing a lot of stuff in designing. I was designing a lot of stuff. I was making PowerPoints, presentations, and I had a lot of experience when I was younger, working on newspaper and working within design programs, but I never really had done too much other than doing newspaper design. But someone told me man, you're pretty good at that. You can do that really quickly. Have you thought about going to school? And I was like, I haven't, but I had a neighbor who went through the Spokane Falls Community College design program back in the mid 90s. And she talked it up cause she got a job right out of college and went and worked for the Spokesman Review. And I remember her telling me that, and I went and talked to her. And I'm like, should I do that? And she's like, yeah, it's great. If you don't even need to really go get a 4-year degree, you can get this 2-year certificate in design, and you can get a job right out of getting an AA.
Right.
And so that's what I went and did. I went to Spokane Falls, and I went into the design program there, and I got my AA in graphic design. And then I actually went back for a 3rd year and got another AA in web design. And so And did you do that? You didn't do that? Okay. I thought maybe you had maybe you'd gone through the
I
fall.
did go to the falls for a little bit for business, like type classes essentially. But no, I didn't go for the design program. I kind of didn't really know what I was trying to do when I was going to the falls, you know. I was just like, I want to know more about business. And then I started Third Kind Apparel, got a job at Zome Design. And, you know, that's kind of like where a lot of my education probably came from, because I started learning more about graphic design through the years I worked there, mainly just self-taught on a lot of that, but I learned a lot more about the garment industry through Zome. I mean, that was kind of my college, going to Zome, you know, in a way.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned this a lot of times on other podcasts or to other people, but I never actually graduated. I missed 2 credits, and I don't think I technically ever got my degree at Spokane Falls, but anyways, that led to
Got what you needed.
I got what I needed. Yeah, like school's one of those things. Like, I think it's great, but like also like I could have saved a lot of money and learned that stuff too by myself. But you know, school has its purpose, but it's also, you know, I don't know how much it's needed when you want to do stuff like design. But yeah, that led to me getting a full-time job right out of college. I worked at a diesel aftermarket e-commerce website in Post Falls. It was based in Post Falls at the time. And they needed a designer to help them do graphics for their web pages and stuff like that. And that was like, they were just changing their specials a lot. Like, they had a lot of specials that they were running all the time.
What was
like
the name of that business?
It's called Alligator Performance. And they're
still around.
They're still around. Yeah. They've been around. They'd been around for about 2 years when I started there. And when I started there, they were pretty small. There was like a team of 5. And I kind of got there at the right time. And I've always kind of I've never been a great designer. I'm not a great, like, I don't do design that well. I'm really well versed in like the technical aspects of it, but I'm not like, I'm no like artist or anything like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, because it's like when you compare a graphic design world, like there's levels.
Right. Yeah. There's different levels.
If
yeah.
you really know what's out there, like it's hard to consider yourself great because there's some people out there that are just insane. It's just like in any comparison, like to anything in this world nowadays, like, yeah, you could be good at something, but to be great, or there's individuals in this world that are accelerated at so many different things.
For sure. Yeah.
I'm that same way too. Like, people are like, oh bro, I like your graphic design. I'm like, I'm amateur. Yeah. At best. Like, I just do simple designs. I know how to make simple designs look clean. But as far as like my graphic design skill set, it is limited, you know?
Yeah. I've made a couple of cool logos in my time, but like everything else is always just kind of like, it's fun it's given me a lot of the tools that I do now. Like that creative mind aspect has really helped me develop to who I am today. But when I was there at Alligator Performance, I really found a knack in like the marketing aspect and how to like build like marketing plans, and, you know, how can we get more customers purchasing our stuff. And, you know, when I got there, it was like 2010. And so Facebook like business pages didn't really exist. They were just starting. And I help grow their Facebook page from 0 to like 20,000 followers in a year. And at the time, like there wasn't really a job title for that. And so I really learned a lot through that, of like helping manage their social media and then do other marketing stuff, like doing Google AdWords, like not doing it for them personally, but like working with a team that helped do it. But when I was like working with this team, I was like, we're paying this team. We're spending about $20,000, like let's say $20,000 a month in advertising, and we're paying this team $5,000 to do it for us. And I'm like looking at what they're doing. I'm like, this is not worth like how much it costs for them to manage it.
Right.
And I was like, I could do that. And I ended up leaving there kind of prematurely, but it worked out for the best. But through that time there, I just learned so much in marketing and developing brand strategy and just working with local clients or working with local, like doing B2B stuff, like getting apparel done, getting stickers done, doing all this stuff. And I kind of took that like marketing coordination and took that and worked at other places around the area, doing a lot of marketing coordination. But I still always bounced around. Like I always had this like 2-year itch. I was just like, I always got kind of tired of what I was doing or where I was at after 2 years. And at one point I was like, I think I'm going to quit marketing and I'm just going to become a groundskeeper and like work on a golf course. I was like, I thought maybe that was I was playing a lot of golf at the time. And I was like, one way to play a lot of golf is to be a groundskeeper. And
for sure.
And so I started doing that and I hate it. And then I realized I hated that. But the one thing
what course were you at?
I was actually at it's called Rock Creek. It's a private course. It's a private country club right across from Black Rock on Lake Coeur d'Alene. And it's a beautiful golf course. It's about 20 people play it on in a day. And we would go out and we would mow the greens, the tee boxes, and we do the fairways every other day, and we'd hand rake almost every bunker. There was probably I think there was like close to like 50 plus bunkers on that course, and but it was like this working. It was fun, like being outside and sweating and like having that be like my day to day. But I was also driving from like Spokane to there every day. Yeah. And that was a bit of a drag. But during that time is when I started listening to podcasts. Like I think I definitely had an iPod, but I would download my podcasts and I would just listen to those all day long. Like it was just like, it was 8 hours a day of just podcasts, but like just discovering.
Do you remember which podcasts you used to listen to in the beginning?
The biggest ones that I listened to in the beginning was I listened to WTF with Mark Maron. He's probably like the OG, he's one of the OG podcasters. I listened to Adam Carolla. I listened to, it was Chris Hardwick. He was, I forgot he changed his name of his podcast multiple times. And then I think later in the into the 2000s, he kind of got canceled for some stuff. I don't think he got canceled, but he just, his podcast kind of switched. But my biggest one was Mark Maron's WTF. It's an interview style podcast. He interviews comedians, celebrities, and just has, conversations all like this. And that's what really struck me. Oh, and I know what else I listen to a lot of. I listen to a ton of fantasy football because I've played fantasy football since like 2003 with my buddies and listened to fantasy football podcasts nonstop. But it was listening to these podcasts. I was like, I could do this. Like I could talk on a microphone. That doesn't seem very hard. And it was and during this time, like I had been working on a golf course. I had went and worked at another marketing company, or not a marketing company, but another in-house marketing for it was a multi-level marketing company called Life Shots and OxyFresh. And it was actually in Coeur d'Alene too. I had all these jobs in Coeur d'Alene. I would never live in Coeur d'Alene, but nothing wrong with Coeur d'Alene, but I would live there. But I was always traveling there. But I was always having these 2-year itches too, like where I was just like, I got kind of sick and tired of what I was doing, and personal stuff would happen. Like around the time when I was kind of having all this stuff, my parents of 30 years got divorced.
Yeah.
And that really fucked me up because
Really?
when we talked about like getting married at such a young age, like that's what my parents did.
Yeah.
Like my parents got married at a super young. They met when they were in high school. They went to prom together. They they did all the things, and my vision of what a good relationship looked like was
Was your parents?
with my parents.
Yeah.
And when it wasn't even when they got divorced. They hadn't even been divorced yet. They had just kind of separated. That was just kind of life altering. And that's when I don't know, like there was, I went back to the golf course a couple times, but the golf course was always kind of like it seemed to be like a changing point in my life. Like, this is what I'm going to do next. And in 2014, when my parents were getting separated and divorced, me and my wife were also having major like fertility issues. Like not issues, I shouldn't say it was an issue, but we couldn't get pregnant naturally. And we had tried in 2010, we had decided to, like after 5 years of marriage, we're going to make this step to start a family. We always wanted to start a family, but it just wasn't happening. I mean, and after 2 years of just trying the natural way, we went and, started doing all the fertility stuff, and we did a lot of that. And so all of this was happening, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and then my parents are getting divorced. And then at the beginning of 2015, I had left my marketing job in Coeur d'Alene, and I went and worked for Zero Res. Did carpet cleaning for 3 months.
Were you actually doing the carpet cleaning, or were you doing marketing for them?
No, I was. My friend actually did marketing for them.
Oh, okay.
He had left his longtime job at KXLY, and he went and worked at Zero Res to run their marketing. And he was, and I was like, do you think that's something I could do? Like, could you put a good word in for me to be a carpet cleaner? And he was just like, are you sure you want to do that, Brennan? And I'm like, well, you guys say you can make a lot of money doing it. You can make up to blah, blah, blah per year. And I was like, it seems like it'd be a good job. And, like if, this might be a good way for me to make money for the family, and, might work with our schedules. And then, maybe I want to get away from marketing and do this. And it was 3 months of, I wouldn't say doing carpet cleaning's hell, because I love Zero Res and carpet cleaning, and because I ended up doing a lot of marketing for them later, but my hands never hurt so much in my life. Like it's like the vibration, the pulling of you pull this like wand all day long. And the biggest part of it is hustling. Like being a technician at Zero Res, like you have to knock doors. You're expected to knock doors and pick up new jobs, because the whole purpose is like you get your route, but like how much can you add to your route? Like, or can you get some extra jobs at another date? Like that's how you made money. Like, and I hated that. I hated trying to sell carpet cleaning to people. I always just kind of wanted to go, and because I'm a nice guy, I always wanted to make it like, hey, you booked 3 rooms. I'm going to clean your 3 rooms. I'm going to offer these extra services to you, but I'm not going to really push them on you.
Yeah.
So I got really good review ratings, but I got terrible like sales ratings. and it's like, you want to have both. You want to have good sales and good reviews, but I just wasn't selling. And I also you were working 7 a.m. to 7 at night. Yeah. Like some days 5 days a week. And it was just like, it was tough. It was like, I reverted back to working in a cubicle wall factory. And it wasn't where I really wanted to be anymore.
Yeah. It sounds like you had to go, you went through a lot of jobs that really weren't fulfilling your purpose. You weren't really finding anything that you loved yet at this point.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like they were all kind of like a struggle. You're like, there's got to be more to this. I can't keep doing this thing. There's got to be a better option.
Yeah, no.
So you kept sifting through jobs. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing carpet cleaning would be an easy job and long hours. Plus, you're trying to then do sales on top of that. That would just, that takes a unique character to be able to go out there, do the cleaning, get sales. Like, you got to kind of be an ego driven person that's like, I'm going to clean all the carpets and get all the money, which is good, dog. Like earn your hustle whichever way you do. But for me, I don't think I would do well at that either because I don't like to push sales on people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like knocking on doors, like literally going up to someone's house, knocking on their door or something. I don't like it when people do it at my house.
Yeah.
Like I don't answer the door. You know, if you're knocking on my door, like I'm not gonna answer.
I just hide. I always try to like, if someone knocks on my door, I just like, I'm like trying to like get away and just wait for them to leave. I'm like on my ring.
I mean, especially at this day and age, I just feel like there's so many ways you can market your company. Why are you knocking on my door?
Right.
Like this is like your home is, this isn't the 50s. This isn't
right.
Like the home is like where you try to retreat from this maniac world that we live in. It was funny the other day, actually. This is a funny story. Like I, have Ring on my house, so I was somewhere else. I wasn't home. I see a guy, he like rings the doorbell. You can tell he's trying to sell something. He has the iPad out and just waiting,
Mm-hmm.
Then he leaves. Well, I come back hours later. This is like, let's say noon or like 11 a.m. This guy was there or something like that. I'm back home around like 4. I like just got home. I'm like turning on my hose to water the plants real quick. And then all of a sudden I turn around, that same guy is in my lawn.
Oh my gosh.
Like, hey man, I'm like, yo, you're still on the block, man? I saw you on my Ring earlier. Like, were you hiding in the bushes? Like, he's like, so he was just trying to sell bug spray stuff, for the perimeter of the house. And I'm like, dog, we just sprayed the house, But he's like, well, could I get some water out of the hose? It's hot out here, It was like 100 something that day. I'm like, of course, brother. I'll get you filtered water from inside. But I'm just like, but I'm not, I'm not buying nothing, dog.
Yeah. That's funny. We used to play, one of the things we used to do, my buddies, we would call the Mormon church and tell them to go to our friend's house. And we would just, it was, I would just
that's
think,
awesome.
But I think you could do the same with Zero. I mean, I should start doing that, just calling people and say, hey, show up at Bobby's house. Everyone's perfectly.
Start really sending these people over to, how many people could you get to show up at one person's house?
That's funny. But Zero's was, it was interesting. But it was at that time when my wife, we had been doing a procedure called IVF. When we had done it, it's just a one time you go and retrieve eggs, and then you have like a certain amount of eggs that are good to go. Like they then freeze them, they freeze the eggs, and then we went through 2 sessions, and the eggs didn't, it didn't happen. And so we had 2 more eggs left, and this was February of 2015, and they're like, okay, because the place we went to SRM here in Spokane, and they're like, we don't like trying to have multiples, but we have 2 eggs left. One of the eggs isn't the best candidate, but we're gonna put 2 in. There's a good chance you could have twins. There's a good chance. I mean, there is a chance that you could have triplets because one of the eggs could become twins, and so we were like, okay, like that's cool, and they took both of them, and so right around that time I know I don't want to do zero res, and I don't really know what I'm going to do anymore, but I know that we're having twins, so I'm like, childcare is expensive, and I was like, I think, Abby, I might need to become a stay-at-home dad, like, because that seems to be like, we're talking thousands of dollars to like eventually put our kids in I don't know why I'm thinking about this like a month after our kids are being born, or not being born, but before like a month after they're kind of conceived. And so I was kind of on like a discovery of like, what am I going to do? And that's when I went back to the golf course and worked pretty much a full season there. And just because I knew it was an easy way to make money and kind of clear my head and listen to a lot of podcasts. But at that same time, my buddy who had gotten me the job at Zerorez had actually came up with the idea that he wanted to start a marketing company. And because at Zerorez, he had, so the Zerorez here in Spokane is owned by a guy named Jeremy McGee, and he owns a couple of other Zerorez's outside of Spokane. And they were just killing it marketing wise. Like they having the best sales, getting a ton of recognition for how well they do their marketing. And a lot of other Zerorez's were coming to Tony and Jeremy and were like, hey, we want your help. Can you help us do marketing? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. And I think through that, they decided, you know what, we should start a marketing agency. Like we should hire the marketing agent that we started to run our Zerorez's and then do marketing for other people. And that's where the idea for the wood shop was born, from Jeremy and Tony Baird. And I had this background in marketing, Google Ads, social media management, web design, brand design, logo, like just doing a bunch of different stuff. And Tony had asked me, hey, do you want to help us do the website and help us do the branding? And I'm like, sure, I can do that. And I kind of told him, like, I really don't want you to pay me for this, but I think they did pay me for it. But I was like, if I help you do this, maybe consider me for a future job. Like once because their plan was to kind of have an agency, but like kind of outsource all of the pieces of it, like do all the other pieces, like the Google AdWords or the social media management, like outsource it to another agency. And I remember just telling Tony, like, don't do that. Like, just have me do it. I can do that. I can, don't pay someone this, you're losing so much money to have another team manage it. So let me do it. Cause there's only a couple of, places at the time. And that's when literally I had made the website and the branding for the wood shop. And on September 26, 2015 is when my children were born. I feel like a couple of weeks, like in October, a couple of weeks later, Tony offered me a part-time job as helping them do marketing and helping them do social media management for their Zerorez's. And I was like, me and Abby talked about it, and she's like, yeah, like do that, like go and work in an agency. And I was like, but it's like not going to really, like, we're going to have to get someone to watch the kids, and it's going to, it doesn't really make sense. And it was that time where like, I was like, your job could just pay for my job could just pay for the childcare. But I think if I would have been a stay-at-home dad, I would have been miserable, like staying at home, like having to, like, I'm not saying like raising my children is like, I would be miserable raising my children, but there are some people that are more well, or what am I trying to say? Are better fit for raising their children, and I'm not. Like I think I would have ended up playing video games and just like rocking them and like feeding them. Like I think I would have been a pretty shitty stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And so we decided for me to go do that part-time, and then that turned into a full-time job within 3 months. And yeah, it was a big, not a big risk. It was not a risk at all, but it was one of those things, like, as a designer going to the falls, like you saw the agencies in Spokane, like 7-2 or the big ones, and you saw all the good designers go work at agencies. And I was like, when I was in design school, I'm like, I'm never going to go work at an agency. Like I'm not good enough. And then when I got that job, I was like, it was pretty small. We were working at Zero Res in like a little small room about the size of this me, Tony, and sometimes Jeremy, the owner of Zero Res. And we were small. Like we had aspirations of growing, but like not to where they're at now, which is they're really big now, but
the wood shop.
Yeah. It started with Tony and Jeremy and then me, but now they have like 12 employees. And they have a space right downtown, and but
I've seen their stuff
Yeah.
around. Yeah,
but
not sure how or where, but I've seen it.
Yeah, but I think it was there where I really really grew into the brand developer that I am today, and really what I learned there like really helped lead towards what I'm doing now. Because like at that same time in 2015, it was me and my buddy had decided to start podcasting. We were like, okay, let's start like when my kids were born. Like we had released 2 episodes before my kids were born, and then
What was the podcast?
So the podcast was a fantasy football podcast.
Okay.
And because there wasn't enough fantasy football podcasts apparently. So for those who don't know, fantasy football podcasts they're kind of like a dime a dozen in the podcasting world. Like there's a million fantasy football, fantasy whatever podcasts, and we thought it would be fun to just shoot the shit once a week, talk about fantasy football, but like no one listened. Like we were getting 5, 6, 7 listens a week. But we kept it consistent. Like we were doing it during the football season once a week, and we did it for 2 years. But it was just like, but no one was listening. And he lived in San Francisco, so it was remote. We were doing like a call in. Like I was using this like lawyers use this way to record their conversations with their clients, and I was using this app to record our conversations on our phone, and we were using our headsets to make it sound somewhat better, but it still sounded like we were on a telephone. Yeah. But that's where I got my foot in to start making podcasts, learning how to edit podcasts and putting music to it. And, that's where it started. And it started because, Tony was like, you should just do something for fun. Like have a creative outlet. And so I started podcasting. Yeah.
All right. So how long were you at the wood shop for then?
I was at the wood shop for 5 years. I was there from 2015 to 2020. And originally when I started there, I did everything. I mean, I didn't do everything, but I did a lot of the heavy, like I would make it sound a lot better than I did a lot more than I did. But I did social media management. I did some brand development, and I ran Google AdWords. Like Google AdWords was a big thing, like because it was our biggest. It was how we made the most money. We didn't bill a ton on it. I mean, because like the cost there, but like we would
make sense. That'd be one of the higher
like
streams.
People spend thousands of dollars on Google AdWords. Like it's a monster,
right. And people aren't looking on social media for carpet cleaning. They're looking on Google.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking on Google. Yeah. And social media was mostly just as a way to like stay active.
Right.
Like here's our offer. Here's like some stuff we're doing. Yeah.
That's not where the money's going to come.
No, yeah. It was kind of like just an added perk.
Yeah. Just to be visible.
But yeah, you could, I mean, when you're doing Google AdWords, like you can track performance there so well.
Yeah, analytics are crazy.
And like radio is, and the other thing Zero is really big on is radio. Like if you listen to any local radio,
I've heard them on there.
Like they're everywhere, and that was their other big piece of what they did. But yeah, like.
So for how long was like the wood shop's clientele just really zero res? Is that how you say it? Zero res?
Zero res, yeah. So it started out, it was I think it was like 3 or 4 different zero reses. And that was for the first like 6 months. And then just through like connections that Tony had made, and through connections that Jeremy had made, we started doing some social media management for Delish Hamburgers and One Tree Hard Cider. Nice. And actually Grant Barnes, the owner of One Tree Hard Cider, was a tech at Zero Res about maybe 8 years before that. He kind of came up with Jeremy when they were starting out. And so that's how the connection with One Tree. But I started helping them manage their social media in 2016 in the spring, both of those accounts. And so we added them, and then we kept on adding more and more zero reses and other kind of industry style clients. So as I was doing everything, we started adding more people to the team, someone to help with email marketing, someone to help with web design, someone to help with graphic design. And slowly I started losing all the fun pieces of marketing, of doing, brand design and doing that type of stuff. And I was at the end of my time there, I was only doing Google AdWords. And if we want to talk about, and I forgive me, Tony, and I've probably told you this, but if you ever listen to this, if you want to talk about soul sucking marketing work, run some Google AdWords for about 30 different clients, and manage close to $100,000 a month in a ad spend, because it is the most stressful, anxiety inducing job in the world, because you have had so many different clients. I was spending so much money, and everybody wants results, and everybody wants to see performance. They want to they want reviews, and I swear to God, I had multiple panic attacks a week. I was always checking my phone, emails. Am I going to get an email from a client?
Sounds terrible.
It was tough. And I was also not doing the fun stuff anymore at the wood shop. I wasn't doing social media management too much anymore. I wasn't creative directing anything. And so I really was
burnt out.
I got burnt out. Yeah.
Got burnt out.
Yeah.
And you had good reason. Part of doing any kind of work for a client when it comes to marketing or ad agencies is the creative process. Yeah. Google AdWords, there's creativity there on how you kind of can, run the ads or play with those things, but you're not doing any design work.
Yeah.
It's not it's all this analytical shit, which is, it brings in the dollars, but it's not necessarily something that exciting. And then add on top, you got your clients that are going to stress you. And nah.
It's fun work. It's fun work when it's working and you're tracking all the, when it's working. And the cool thing was about it is that it was working. It was always working mostly. And every base was different with their lulls or how it wasn't working. But at the end of the day, they have a KPI, a key performance indicator of what they want to, how much they want to accomplish, how much they want each lead to cost them, and that kind of stuff was just stressful. But I will say one of the many good things about working at the wood shop, was that they really cared about you as a person and how you were doing mentally and, self-care. And through that time I had been working with a work coach, like an ontological coach that kind of helped me figure out me, like more about me. And, you know, at the same time, like I was still dealing with a lot of my parents' stuff of, you know, getting divorced after 30 years and having kids and not really loving what I was doing. And so I was seeing a work coach or a life coach. I guess I should call it. It was more of a life coach. And they also still gave me time every week to personally work on my own projects. Like they gave me, I think 4 hours a week to have personal time, like on the clock work. And during that time is when I was still podcasting. I was still, you know, we had switched my fantasy football podcast from being a fantasy football podcast to a 90s nostalgia podcast called the Super 90s Brothers. And when me and my buddy Adam made that switch to creating that podcast, we started seeing immediate results of getting more listens, people being interested in the shows themselves. And it was actually really fulfilling to be making a podcast that people were listening to and getting feedback on. And friends were telling me like, oh, that episode was great. But we were still doing it remotely. And it was very, you know, that part was tough because it was just, the sound quality was always kind of off. Like it was just, you can go back and listen to it. Like I haven't took them all down. My friend wants me to. He's like, take down the ones that sound like shit because like they just sound bad. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Like it's there. It's our work in progress. Like it's, you know, like
yeah.
But I still had this creative outlet of making that podcast with a buddy. But one day we got an Apple review, and the guy said, what did he say? Basically like, love the idea of the show, but the sound sucks. The sound quality is awful. Like, so I'm out. And I was just like, God, that sucks.
Yeah.
And I was like, what can we do? And that was always in the back of my mind, like, what can we do to make this sound better? Because my friend lived in the Bay Area. Like, we can't like do a live podcast or in-person podcast. And at the wood shop, I had been given the opportunity to go to a marketing convention in Portland. And it was at this marketing convention that I had, there was a couple of breakout sessions on how to utilize podcasting for your business. Like how do you use podcasting for your business? And I was like, that's an interesting idea. And then I went to another breakout session that was like how to do marketing for podcasts. And I was like, a lot of this, it started turning a lot of wheels in my head of like podcasting as a service. I was just like, well, I was like thinking about Spokane. I was like, this doesn't exist. Like it doesn't exist in Spokane where you can go to a studio and record a podcast. And I was like, I don't really even know how to start because I'm making a podcast on my phone. Like, but I was like, it was in the back of my mind, like podcasting was something that I could offer to clients, or I could start doing more of in-person podcasts. And I actually went back to the wood shop because we kind of had a little meeting, you know, like how did the convention go? And I was like, I told Tony, I was like, dude, I think we should offer podcasting to our clients, like as an option for them to like, as a way to like leverage their business. And he was like, like I like where your head's at, but I just don't think we have any like interest in really pursuing that right now. Cause there wasn't a business model there. There wasn't really anything that would show like, hey, pay us to make a podcast. This will help you, you know, get more business. But it was there. I was like, you know what? I need to figure out how to produce a podcast, like in-person podcast. I need to buy equipment. I need to start teaching myself this trade that I've learned the editing piece of it. The editing piece came really naturally, but I need to like get all the pieces. And at the same time, I had I still have two friends. My friends Andrea and Nate. Nate came to me and he was like, "Hey, we should start a podcast together." And I was like, okay, like in one weekend we had gone to me, him and Andrea had gone to Lizzo in Seattle, and we were just driving there and we were like talking about, starting podcasts, and we decided when we got back to like really seriously consider it and what that would look like. And we had a meeting that we went to the Peacock Lounge and had some martinis, and we're just talking about, podcast ideas. And he was like, you know what we should do? We should do, and he kind of came with this idea. He's like, we should do a locally centric podcast where we were featuring people in Spokane. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I love this idea. Like, because like at the time, like, and this is 2000.
What year is this?
This is 2019. And nothing really existed yet as like a podcast about Spokane. And yet we were just like, yeah, let's do it. But I was like, how are we going to get guests? Like, I don't know a ton of people. I know you don't know a ton of people, but we could try. And we were like, what we should ask is our friend who went with us to Lizzo, Andrea, who also worked at the wood shop with me. We should ask her because she knows everyone in Spokane. Mm-hmm. And so we like called her up and said, hey, you're missing the meeting. You're missing the meeting you're supposed to be a part of. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so she came and she's like on board, and that's when we started Spokast, like that, from that meeting and at the Peacock Lounge. And we came up with the name Spokast at that time too, together. And about a month later, we started recording our first our first episode, and we just did it in Nate's apartment, his condo, which was really close to the wood shop, and but we, I bought all the pieces. I'd bought 4 microphones. I'd bought this it's called a Zoom recorder, and it has like 4 XLR inputs, and you can just put it on your table and put connect some mics to it, and that's how we started. That's how Spokast like started, and it was magical. It was such an amazing like experience to like to start this podcast. And our first guests on the show were Ginger Ewing and Luke Baumgarten, and from Terrain. And Andrea is really good friends with Luke, and it was a great first couple guests because they're true and blue. I don't know if it's true and blue, but they're really passionate Spokanites. And yeah, I feel like, it was
helped get you listeners, I'm sure.
At first, like, it was just a hustle of, we started an Instagram, a Spokast Instagram, which is still the same Spokast Instagram that I'm running today. I've changed the handle a couple times, but we kind of launched it, a month before our first episode dropped, our first full episode dropped. And it was really just hustling, like, to get people to know about it, tell people about it.
Like what ways were you hustling?
I bought Sticker Mule, got coasters, stickers. Just every time we had a guest on, we had coasters to give them, stickers to give them. That was the big thing, but it was just posting a lot on Instagram. And I think at that time, Instagram was the algorithm was a little nicer.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse if you're a business trying to promote. Like, they're just gonna try to suck every freaking thing out of you if you want attention to do it these days. So,
and I don't think we actually we weren't really like trying to convince our guests to hey, promote us. Like, we asked them to share it if they could. It wasn't like a big ask, but it was mostly hustling on Instagram to promote the podcast. And in the first week of the first episode coming out, we had, I think, 100 listens, and actually in the first day, and that was when we were like, we have something here. Like, there's something special here. And we kept on we did that for.
So were you both interviewing people?
It was 3 of us actually.
3 of you interviewing whoever you had on.
Whoever we had on, yeah. And so it was usually one. We usually had one guest, and it was just a fun. Like it was just we asked questions about Spokane, what their favorite things to do in Spokane are. We, have them talk about what they're doing in Spokane. It was really about featuring local Spokaneites of what amazing things they're doing. And so, and it was like the first couple of guests we had it was Luke and Ginger, and then we had Carly Ingersoll on, and we had a bunch of other
Carly from Lucky You.
Lucky You, and that was right when Lucky You was also
getting opened.
It was opening. Yeah, it was like 2019. I think they opened.
They had the Bartlett before.
Yeah. And having her on and talk, and the kind of the running joke on Spokast was everyone always, even like after Carly, everyone always talks about like Lucky You as being their favorite place to go in Spokane. And so it was a lot of fun. We had,
How many episodes did you guys end up doing?
Well, we're still kind of doing it, but it was mostly in the first 6 months. I think we released about 25, and we were doing it somewhat weekly. We interrupted them with like other smaller shows. Like we would do our own. We called it Extra AF, Spokast Extra AF, and we would do like our own takes on what's kind of going on, like stuff that's going around in the city. We would have some friends on. We just the kind of bullshit. We would we kind of interrupt the main guest episodes with some side shows, but it was all going great. It was the 2020 was like the future's bright for Spokast. We promoted ourselves heavily to win best of local podcast in Inlander's best of. We won that, and it was the first Inlander that ever had a best of podcasts category, and we got interviewed, and we were in the magazine or whatever, Inlander, and we actually got a write up in there, and then fucking COVID happened. Like literally, like the year before I had gone to the best of, and it was actually here at the Wonder Building. I went to the best of party, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Like I want to win a best of award. Like this is so cool to win a best of. It'd be like, it's a dream to like win this and go to the party, pick up your thing, whatever. And the party was all laid out. We were going to go do it was March 16th. And a week before that is like when all the COVID stuff started happening. And then they're like, we're not sure if we're going to be able to do this, but we'll see. And then March 16th, and then everything shut down.
Canceled it.
And then we tried to do the podcast remotely, and like life had just ended. Like it was impossible to do an episode because we were all remote. We couldn't do it in person. And it was at that time too, in beginning of COVID, we're like, can you be in the same space as someone else? Can you not? Like how far do you got to be away? Like it was just like, no one really knew how to behave or how to not behave, but how to have life go on and do normal things. And so we kind of just paused it.
All right. So you're started Spokast, things were going well. Pandemic hits the whammy on you.
Yeah.
And things slowed down because it did for all of us, of course. So how did you transition through that time, and what were some of the ways you worked around it?
Well, so still working at the wood shop, like I had a lot more free time because we were working remotely a lot. I mean, I think for the first like 3 months, or 2.5 months of COVID, like we were working remotely,
right?
And there's just nothing to do. Like it was a weird time for everyone. I mean, especially in the podcasting world, like in general, like, cause Mark Maron, who I had talked about, WTF Podcast, he had never done a remote podcast ever. Like he'd never done a Zoom recording.
Right.
And it really started changing this world of podcasting for doing Zoom. And like I had been doing a Zoom podcast for already, 2020, like we started Super 90s Brothers in 2017. So we had already been doing it for 3 years. And so I was already familiar with the whole doing a Zoom podcast. So that was great. And Super 90s Brothers had already kind of still been, it was just, I've never really promoted Super 90s Brothers heavily, but it just always kind of gets listens. Like, I really don't know how to explain it, because we will release an episode and in 24 hours we'll get 150 listens. And that's not a ton in the world of podcasting, but like it's a lot for a podcast that doesn't promote itself. But nothing really changed so much. Like it changed that we weren't doing Spokast anymore. But I guess kind of from COVID really led to me really learning that I could do podcasting professionally, is because I had got my equipment. I had learned how to do this, and through winning Spokane's, best of local podcast, my friend Andrea, who was on Spokast with us, she had a friend reach out to her who worked for the conservation district. And she was like, hey, we usually do this yearly convention, a symposium called the Farm and Food Expo. And since it's COVID and we're not doing in-person stuff right now, we don't want to do a Zoom like expo. We don't want to do all of our guest speakers through Zoom, and because people had been doing that had been a big, how do conventions, or how do all these, business conventions still happen, like, and how they do it remotely. And Hillary had been doing a lot of these, and she's like, she hated it, but she's like, but it was also when she was doing them, she was listening to them and doing stuff around her house. She's like, it sounds like it's like a podcast. And so she reached out to Andrea about us helping her produce a podcast for the Spokane Conservation District. And Andrea didn't have any interest in producing it or doing it. And I was the one who was making Spokast, and I pitched them my first, how like 10 episode season. Like, this is how much a 10 episode season is going to cost. And I don't even know how I came up with the numbers I was coming up with. I kind of just like set myself at an hourly rate and how much everything would cost to do. And I kind of just proposed it to them, and they were like, let's do it. And I was like, you're just going to say yes? Like, they're like, yeah, like, because the other thing is, like, they have, being a conservation district, they get a certain amount of money allotted towards basically doing this convention. And so basically they were like, they're probably saving a lot of money by just doing a podcast.
Right.
And I was like, interesting. And so I was like, maybe I could make this a business. Maybe I can make this little side hustle, like do 2-3 podcasts locally, help them produce, their podcasts. And it was cool. I was like, this could be a good side hustle.
Yeah, this was a first sign that you could run a business doing hosting and producing podcasts.
Yeah, but I was also like thinking, like, if I wanted to make this like a full-time job, I would have to do 50 of them to make it like
at the rate.
At the rate I was doing it. And it was very cool. And at that same time, as I was starting that, I found out about this local company called Speak. And they were doing exactly what I wanted to do. I don't even, like, it was like, this is my business. This is what I was going to create. Yeah. A studio and make it accessible for people in Spokane to podcast. And it's I mean, it's my time at Speak is a blessing and a curse. And what happened was funny. It was that at the same time, the wood shop was working with Speak too. Like they were doing some stuff, some work together, doing some web design stuff. And I was like, this seems like a total conflict of interest to me, like for you guys to be working with them. Yeah. And it actually kind of made me and Andrea kind of had an argument about it. Yeah. And they had contacted her about having Spokast on their podcast. And like on the Speak, and I believe you were, I know you were interviewed on the Speak.
Yeah, I was
podcast.
They had me on there. Yep.
And anyways, because they were contacting everyone to come in and check out their space and interview them.
Yeah. I don't remember how I first heard of them, but essentially I was, I've been looking to do a podcast.
Yeah.
I'd contacted them, to see what pricing and stuff was. And they're like, hey, why don't you just come in for an interview?
Yeah.
And this, that, and the third. And I mean, I met everybody, and just the way they had set it up, I was not very intrigued by it. There was certain things that just didn't seem right, for me.
Yeah.
So, and what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I could see that, because the model was weird when they started.
It was really weird.
It was, they switched their model, half a dozen times there.
Right.
But they ended up contacting me to help them edit their podcasts, because
they didn't know how to do that, I'm sure.
I will give one of the guys there a benefit of the doubt that he knew how to do that, but apparently he didn't, maybe. and so I just started editing their podcast, and I did it actually for trade, which was silly.
Yeah, so wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So they contact you to do editing for their podcast that they're creating.
Yeah.
But of course, at the same time, you were like, this is my business idea.
Yeah.
Now these sons of bitches are doing it. And then they call you and offer you a job to edit their podcast. But you were also mad with the wood shop at the same time, because there was like conflict of interest. So what kind of like led you to take it on, like to do it? Because at that time you felt like, well, I'm not going to compete with them. Or,
right. Well, no, I wasn't going to.
What was your thought process there?
Well, I was intrigued by their studio. Like it
was nice.
It was a nice.
The studio was cool.
The studio was cool, and
downtown.
Yeah, and
cool
it was in the Bennett Block.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I like the idea of like having a nice space to record my podcast at.
Yeah, it was a good idea.
And I kind of just positioned myself there to like get a job, because like I'm gonna edit their show. The editing's not gonna take me too long to do.
Right.
And I'll just.
Did you feel like it was a good opportunity to kind of see how
were
going to operate the idea you had? I mean, it'd be like a good learning experience, and maybe.
Well, I mean, when I was there, I was promised the world. Like, of course. Like it was just like they were promised. Yeah, like right? they had this amazing idea of like giving podcasting away for free, and we'd get community involvement to help support the cause and get, and I was like, this sounds like a really interesting idea, and I can help massage pieces of it to make it approachable and more, make that idea easy. But they were just throwing money at a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't talk on that, because I don't. Yeah. I feel like I probably could get in trouble for some of the stuff I could say about what was going on, because I wasn't really a part of that business decision making, but I definitely was seeing it. But I was also like helping them come up with workflows of how to better produce podcasts, so it was easier to
So they wanted
like,
you to do more
they
than
wanted
editing.
Yeah, well, and I just kind of sold myself as like,
You
because
just kind of naturally.
I was a
like,
brand
well,
maker.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
was, I mean, I had helped build other brands. I had helped, market other
Yeah.
companies. Like I knew like how to do that well.
Yeah, and it was natural for you to be like, yo, this could be better here.
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys doing this for?
And I knew how to do everything that they wanted to do. Like I could host that podcast that they were doing better. I could edit it. I could get better guests in. I could get more podcasts in there. I could, I feel like I'm a naturally like, inviting person and easy to talk to. And they kind of came off as salesy and kind of inauthentic, and they weren't really Spokane. They were just trying to make some money. And I was like, well, that's not me. I'm not just trying to make some money. I'm trying to actually give people a place to really, do their craft, to make their dream come true of making a podcast and making it easy. And so I kind of just went along with it, and I was, offered a job, and I was offered a really good starting wage. And then I was then offered stock in the company, and it was all a good experience, but it was a good experience. I should say that it was just bad management and bad decision making on the owner's part. So
yeah, because they didn't last long.
No, they didn't.
They didn't last long. And then like they opened up, and then within a short time, they're like, we're opening a podcast in Boise. We're opening a studio. Like, we're opening studios here. I'm like, you guys haven't even proven success at one place yet. Like, what are you guys talking about? Opening up multiple studios now. Like, if you guys don't have... That was just crazy to me. And I was like, thank God I did not sign up. That was not the right place. I felt it in my gut,
Yeah. It was definitely... I will say the podcasts I did help start there. I'm working with a handful of them now.
Yeah.
And
it was good for you.
it was good for me.
Yeah.
But it made me, I think the one thing it taught me was like, this can exist.
Oh, for sure.
If someone can manage it correctly, and someone that actually cares about Spokane can do it. Like I was always trying to tell them, like, we're going too big. Let's make this work in Spokane. But it was always about how much money could we make if we open this over. And I was like, wasn't really on board with that. But through it, I got the opportunity to produce a couple of really great podcasts and meet a lot of just amazing people. And it gave me the vision to do it the right way and to make this space. Because after I had left there, it was just, I did not know what I was going to do. Because it was like, I had this dream of helping people make podcasts, but now I was kind of out of a job.
When did you leave there? I guess, when did you leave Speak Studios?
I left Speak in August of last year of 2021. So I was there for about a little over 10 months and I will say 1 month of that was a good month. The rest of it was like writing on the wall, but I feel like I'm a very loyal person, and I'm also a very forgiving person. And I just saw a lot of podcasts that I had brought in, and that, someone particularly had told me, like, I really hope this works out because, I by taking my podcast to this level, I don't want to have it go backwards. And I was just like, that was a lot of a pressure, but it was also like, I want to make sure I can always have a space for people to do this. And in August of last year, I was kind of like, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do.
Because abruptly it wasn't working out with Speaks, essentially. Like it just ended with them.
Well, essentially, I just was never paid. I for 3 months I was not paid by Speak, and I'm not afraid to say that. And
you were paid the first 7 months, and then 3 months.
Well, I will say I was paid some months, and I was not paid other months, and I was promised. But then stock options for months that I wasn't paid, which, yeah. I'm a bit of, I was a bit of I learned a lot about working with people too during this process. Is like, I know who to sniff out when working with the right people, because I almost got fooled again after I left Speak, because there was an opportunity to go work for another company locally, to help them do some podcasts and do some programming, and I was like
similar to the idea.
No, not similar to not similar to Speak or Spokast. It was more, helping them with their own original content, and I then I realized my views did not really align with that company, and I was kind of told by some friends that I probably shouldn't go work for them, and I was like. That was a good decision. And so it was through that, that was last August, September, where I had about three or four podcasts that I was still producing and still helping, create, and they were still sticking with me, and I was podcasting in my basement. I was podcasting at fellow Luke Baumgarten, who also does a local podcast called Range. He gave me the opportunity to go work at Fellow and use their space for producing podcasts. And that's where I kind of sat there for about 6 months. And
Fellow's the co-working
space?
space?
Fellow's the co-working space in the Cracker Building right above Hogwash and IPK. Inland Pacific Kitchen. And I worked there and, got my bearings of, getting more podcasts. But I was also moving my equipment around I didn't have a dedicated space. I had,
you had
my
working space.
Exactly. I was using their rooms.
Met Luke there too because I wanted a professional space to host my podcast, and that was one of the biggest things. I actually had met Luke there. It must have been before you got there, because they were like, yeah, well, you could probably use these conference rooms, kind of thing to do it in.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I was like, I didn't know. I just didn't feel like it was going to work out for me at that time. So I didn't pursue that. But
yeah. I know they had visions of making one of their rooms into a podcasting studio. I know that one of the rooms particularly is a very small room, but they had visions of that. But it takes a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of you have to have someone that knows what they're doing to help produce the stuff for you, or at least help you set it up. And that's kind of what I've always been trying to do at Spokast, is making podcasting approachable for anyone who wants to do it at all levels of expertise. You could probably edit a podcast, or you could probably do all the pieces of it, but
I can.
You can't, but it's just,
I just don't want to.
Right.
I hate it. I don't like this. For me to spend that time, I've tried to do those things on my own. Whether it was, cause I know what I'm good at, and that's I'm the idea, I'm the visionary. That's what I do, but I can't execute all these skill sets to make all those visions or things I want to do come true. I'm one man at the end of the day, so to do all of those things, it's just it takes a toll on you to try to learn all those skill sets, and you can really boss through it if you want to.
Yeah.
But for me, it's I'd rather reserve that energy. So, that's why I waited until this opportunity with you presented itself, where it's worked out exactly how I would want, a relationship and podcasting to work. So
yeah, no, I mean, I want to make it as turnkey as possible and make it as easy for anyone to come in here and, start a podcast and make it approachable too. Like I believe in equity when it comes to like how I charge clients. Like and the example I always give is like if Apple came and asked me to make a podcast for them, the cost for them to make a podcast versus the cost of someone just starting out to make a podcast who doesn't really have much money to make a podcast, like, it's going to be different costs. Yeah. Like, because, and that's how, and I really think that's how business sometimes should be, just because, because in maybe like goods is a different story, but in service provided, like, I don't want to make this unapproachable. And I also don't want to just give it I also don't want to just make it
too accessible.
Well, I shouldn't say too accessible, but like, for example, Spokane Library just opened up a podcasting studio.
Right.
You can go and reserve it a couple hours. I think you can record it, reserve it 2 hours at a time, and you can use their space, use their mics and their board, and you can use it all. But they kind of just put you in there. And then
you got to know how
to do that. You got to edit it, and then you got to do the rest of it. And I don't want people to struggle with that. That's what stops people from producing their podcasts. Is like it's having to edit the podcast, having to publish it, having to do all these pieces of it. Like I will say like I'm the most inconsistent podcaster because doing my own work. Like doing my own podcast, like none of my podcasts have ever come out on a weekly schedule, like for an extended period of time, because like it's easy to just be like, I got other things to worry about. But like the one thing I know I am good at is making sure that my clients' podcasts come out on time and that it's done well and that it's done, professionally, and that you have good sounding stuff. Like I don't want to get that. When someone turns on your podcast, I want it to sound as amazing as it can. Like, and that's why we have the why I use the best equipment. I don't want to make this sound like it's a hobby.
Yeah, no, you don't now want it to sound that way. Yeah, no, everything sounds so great with my podcast. I mean. I tried before with mics, and I got good mics. It's just to get the sound right and all of that. It takes if you don't know, it takes a lot to learn that, and to get it to sound very clean. I just love showing up, recording, and getting the files. That's all I want to do.
Right.
I don't want to have to worry about anything else. I love the creative aspects, and thinking about the interview and those kinds of things. But as far as like the back end work to get it ready to post, I don't want to have to really think about that part, But, from going and working at Fellow to where I am today, like it's kind of been a dream to actually be doing, what I'm doing now. Like, I feel like someone might have said on your show, like when you do what you love, it doesn't really feel like work. And like I really like I get to come into my studio every day. I get to help people podcast. And I get to meet really, really extraordinary people all the time. I get to listen to the podcast live, and it's just I can't really. If you told me in 2019 when I had coming up with this idea that I would be helping create 25 podcasts locally in Spokane, I would have told you you're crazy. That's how many you're helping with right now, or that's how many clients you have. I think the number right now is I have 25 active podcasts, and then I have about 33. So I think about 8 more, kind of in progress, either going to be releasing
in the next couple months or in the process of starting. And it's just like, I just have a lot in, and it's amazing like how many people, want to start podcasts. Like it's amazing when you go, like when I go to like an event and I talk to them and when you tell someone you're a podcaster or you're a podcast producer, it's a lot more interesting than telling someone you're an accountant, and they want to talk to It's always funny when I'm hanging out with Abby and she doesn't want to talk to someone. She just tells them that I'm a podcast producer and they're like, they totally ignore her. And then they just talk to me and then I'm stuck having to explain or talk about podcasting, which I love doing, obviously. So
it's a business.
But yeah, I don't think I can't say enough how lucky I am to be in the space, and that I now have great partners that I'm working with that, afford me the time to be able to be a part of, to be able to create this and to keep it going.
So at Fellow, were you running this concept with like hosting client-based podcasts? Is that what you were doing at Fellow too?
So at Fellow, I was just kind of a contract. I was just Spokast, like this kind of renting the space there, like a co-working space.
But you were like helping run other people's podcasts.
Yeah, but it wasn't people at Fellow or people that were coming to Fellow. It was mostly my clients, and
that's what I mean.
Oh yeah.
You had the business model set up.
I had the business model as soon as I got. Well, I had
out of Speak.
I had it already set up
because once you left Speak, there was you were working with clients, but for Speak. So when Speak, fell through, essentially. Those people are like, hey, I still need to record my podcast.
Yeah.
You're like, well, yes, I can still help you.
Yeah, I can still help you. Yes. And some of those podcasts had some lulls, and some of them I either just reached out to and said, hey, I'm doing this myself now. Like,
if you want to come,
come work with me, like, and then just through word of mouth and, through my, my relationship with Luke and helping him with Range, he got me connected with the Spokane Workers Co-op. And I actually ended up joining the co-op at the beginning of 2022. So my business is actually part of a larger entity. And I get to be a part of that versus kind of having to run my business by myself.
What are some of the benefits of that?
Well, the big benefits are, revenue sharing and kind of having a stable income as I'm growing my business. Any money that is made for Spokast goes back to SWC. And instead of me making, money just off of the clients that I'm having come in, I'm actually just getting a salary.
Yeah.
And so
that's nice.
And so I have that, and I've been able to help grow my business easier without having to
the stress that you don't have to worry about.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so and they help me with all the, the biggest other benefits. They help me with the, tax stuff. They help me with, business license stuff. I have insurance through them. I have a lot of the perks that you'd have of working for a big company.
Yeah.
But I'm a worker owner, and so I actually am. I'm a part owner in all of the co-op of all the other businesses that are a part of it as well, which are Golden Handle Brewing.
I haven't heard of them.
They're actually in the old Steel Barrel tap room.
Okay.
So they're there. Great Harvest Bakery up on the South Hill. Range is a news organization that's Luke's company, and then
it's a news organization.
Yeah, they do news stories locally of about what's going on in Spokane. From they do a lot more pieces about how the people within our community are treated, and very
activism,
very active, very showing the human side of like one of the big pieces that they've done recently is Camp Hope.
Yeah.
And they've
Drive by it every day almost.
And they've gone into Camp Hope and talked to the homeless, houseless in Camp Hope and asked them why are they there, what brought you here, and done stories on, you know, talking to them of like, you know, what led you to be homeless.
Here. Yeah.
And so they're trying to tell stories like that and just give more of a human element to what's going on in our city versus like that, you know, the more not getting the human element there.
Yeah, because we like to separate ourselves from them.
Right.
Like
We like
they're a whole nother species almost or something. Like it's no.
Yeah.
There's a few degrees of separation and you could have been there too.
For sure.
Yeah.
So then there's a couple other companies that are a part of it as well. But yeah, being a part of the co-op has afforded me the ability to just grow my company a lot.
Sounds great, man. I didn't
quicker.
know how it worked really. So
Yeah.
It sounds like you get a salary. You don't have to stress about a lot of different things with the income of the business. Allows you the freedom of creativity, really, you know, and they obviously believed in the idea, brought you in on the co-op. So that's amazing, man. That's really good.
And yeah, so that's it. And through that, I've met a lot of other, you know, clients, and I think it just keeps on growing. The more, you know, people used to think of podcasting as like, I want to be the next Joe Rogan, or like I want to like, and
you would hear people say a lot like, oh, like it's too late to start a podcast.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
You're never going to be like Joe Rogan
or
it's
stuff like that. Yeah.
It's like, that's not
and
why I ever wanted to do it. So yeah, I don't know.
And kind of what I feel like I tell people is, you know, there are so many podcasts out there. It's true, but everyone has, you know, it's a lot like what you're saying with city chapters. I mean, everyone has their own story to tell, and everyone has their own idea, and everyone has their passions that they want to share with the world. Like there's so many different style podcasts that can be successful, in how you gauge your success is different for everyone. Like if you want thousands of listens, you're going to have to hustle. You're going to really have to hustle to, you know, promote your podcast to do that. But if you just want to do something that is, you know, meaningful to you, like there's different ways of doing it. And I've been working a lot more with, you know, local businesses to help, you know, share their stories like within their company or within business to business, working with some like a consultant agency on, and I also like when I was starting Spokast, the podcast with my friends, I had this really like cagey, oh, no one else can start a Spokane podcast because there can only be one. There can only be one Spokane podcast. And through that, I've learned, no, that's not true. There can be hundreds of Spokane podcasts. They just can all tell different stories. There's so many different stories to tell here. And, you know,
that's why I never understood some, you know, the concept of like, people who try to close out other people, you know, in their marketplace or whatever. It's like, yo, there's enough for all of us to eat, you know?
Yeah.
If you're that insecure about your product,
right.
That's really what it comes down to. It's like it's an insecurity thing because you're worried about people taking your piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And you're only thinking of that piece of the pie. There's a whole pie here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, you're only focused on your little piece. And so if anybody takes that piece, it's just because you feel like these people are doing something better than you.
Yeah.
And you're at the end of the day worried about somebody doing something better than you. That's really what it always comes down to. So people try to gatekeep to keep people from getting that opportunity to even be better than them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
But we all deal with it. Like even if you're aware of that, it's hard not to think of those things. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard not to be like, oh, is somebody gonna, you know, I'm going to bring somebody on my podcast and then they're going to have them on theirs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so what? And
So
then
what?
it's
Yeah.
more exposure. And I also think too, like, you know, like whoever you are hosting a podcast, well, that's unique to you. You're a unique person. Now, whether your uniqueness means your podcast is going to flourish or not, that's a different ball game that we're talking about. But it doesn't mean you can't play the game. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean you can't have a podcast. And it's all about like what your goals are. For me, you know, the biggest thing for me is like, you know, this podcast that I've been finding for me, it's like therapy. This is for me to sit down and have uninterrupted conversations with people for around 2 hours right now.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that in normal life.
No.
You don't get to do that no more. You don't get to sit down and talk with people uninterrupted anymore. That shit don't happen.
It doesn't. No, it really doesn't.
Not even with your loved ones, hardly ever, because a phone's going to go off or something's going to, I need to go do this or I need to clean that, you know, like whatever it is, like you don't get to sit down and just talk with people anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I do this. You know, that's my reason. If I get 1,000 views, 100 views, 1,000,000 views, cool.
Yeah.
But I do it because I want to sit and learn and talk with people. You know, that's why I do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's why all the podcasts that I've ever started have always mostly started from the fact that like, I just want to hang out with this person. Like when I started my podcast with my buddy who lived in the Bay Area, like I was just like, it's just nice to talk to him, you know, once a week, every other week.
Seriously.
And when I started my podcast with my friends, like it was great to like hang out with them, and it was great meeting new people in Spokane. Like I would like
genius idea.
The first person I ever interviewed on that podcast was Luke Baumgarten, and now he helped me. He helped me create this. Like if I didn't do that, I don't know if I'd be here right now. And like same with like the podcast I have with my wife. Like we don't do it as much anymore, but when we do our podcast, it's like it's such a having an uninterrupted hour with her, like just talking to her about like what's going on in our lives or what's going on. And we do a lot of like pop culture stuff and play games, and it's just a good way to just like get this connection, because when you go to dinner, you're going to be distracted by your phone, or you're going to be distracted by whatever, or you're like, whenever you take that, try to be meaningful about like not being distracted. It's always difficult. You always still kind of, it's always still kind of in the back of your mind. But for whatever reason, for me, podcasting, like I can get completely like zoned into that, into that person.
People be like, "Oh my God, we talked for 3 hours,
right?
2 hours." Like I didn't know that was fast. You know, it's like, that's what it's like when you actually sit and talk with people uninterrupted. You know, it's like honestly, it doesn't feel like enough time, but it's enough. It is enough time to get a good base established with that person, and you know, there's not many people. Like a lot of people that I've had on the podcast, maybe quite a few haven't been on podcasts before. So, you know, to have that experience with them and, you know, be able to sit with them for that amount of time, that's something that me and that person have together now.
Yeah,
you know
for
what I
sure.
mean? And
Yeah.
that's something that people can watch now.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know, if you know, it's just going to be there for people to see that person if they want to watch and get to know that person better, or me, or whatever that case may be. Like, it's special to be able to lock in and sit down and just talk with somebody for 2 hours in this day and age. And like, I think that's really the beauty of podcasting for me, and like the way that I view it is just like, I like sometimes I lose the sight of like why I'm even doing it, but you know, because I think that the only reason that happens is I get convoluted with ambitious goals of what the podcast needs to be. Yeah. And I always come back to like, dog, I'm just doing this to talk to people.
Yeah.
Like wherever it goes, cool. And of course I'm going to try to handle things at a professional level, but I need people that can do that for me. That's why you're such an essential part of this podcast, because I would be too stressed out to try to do all of this and all the other things I do for my businesses. You know what I mean? So for me to be able to just show up and talk with people and then I'm out, it's like, that's amazing.
For sure.
Like it's really stress-free for me. So
I'm glad I could provide it for you. I mean, I got to say, like, working with you it's been, I mean, not a lot. I don't think we ever talked about this. You've ever talked to us on the podcast, but our friend, John Ward, I believe he recommended you to me.
Basically, I had seen you guys doing stuff. I had seen you before here or there through different means.
Yeah.
Then John was working with you, and I was like, "Yo, what's going on with you and this guy Brennon?" I was like, "I'm trying to get a podcast started. You should make that introduction." And he got right on it for me, and made it happen. And
I bet I met John on a podcast, and your first guest on the show, Jazz, I became quick friends with Jazz because we worked right across the street, and we had similar interests, and we were trying to do some projects together. But I mean, even the guests that you've had come through, Dave, even I would say your guests have been great. Like they treat me like I'm a person here. Like I'm not just like a person producing your podcast or like the guy behind the board. Like I've talked to a couple other your guests outside of here, and it's been real special, like watching you do this podcast and seeing it grow, and the conversation have had it's been very special, and it's cool to be a part of. And I think before this I was like, you have been one of my most if not the most consistent podcasts I've had in the past 6 months. So I appreciate your dedication to it. And I think that's a great question I need to start adding to people's intakes is like, why do you want to make a podcast? Because I think when you ask yourself that question, if you like, why do you want to do it? Like, if it is about making money or if it is about getting fame, like, you got to come at it the right way then, but I like that because I've never really thought about that when I've been making my purposes of making podcasts have mostly been for connection and for trial and error, just testing stuff out,
something you like to do and something to do that you enjoy. Right. So I don't know. I mean, to each their own. I just think like, how do you remain being authentic, and if my intentions were to be like, oh, I'm gonna blow this podcast up to be this big old thing, it's like you get lost in that, and I think that really kind of ekes out of the content that you create as you interview people, as you're acting as this persona to be that guy, and so I think I'm starting this podcast at a good age and time in my life because I've worked through a lot of those egocentric personality traits that I have.
For sure.
Because I definitely at one time was like much more ego driven and like want to be that guy, and it's like I don't have that now, It's like, I mean, I always deal with it at some level. We all do. But now it's just like, one of my friends told me the other day, he's like, dude, it's like each podcast has, gotten better. It's gotten smoother. He's like, they were always good, but he knows me really well. So he's just like, it just seems so natural to you. And that's what's been cool too. Everybody that has came on, or the feedback or the people that have listened to it. And I know personally when I see them, they're like, yeah, bro, you seem really natural at it. And that's because I'm approaching it in a natural way. I'm approaching this as, just a natural conversation more than it is like an interview, like I don't really approach it like an interview necessarily. I approach it like I want to have a conversation and learn from this person and hear what they have to say. So that's why, a lot of times I am just sitting back and I'll just listen because it's like, that person's on a roll, like, right. But there's, things to learn. And you've got such a head start on all of this. It's, great to be able to team up with you and, give opportunities to others, that do want to get started, and making that painless for them, because I know there's got to be a lot of amazing people out there that could utilize Spokast in a way to get their podcast going. Like there's this, you've set it up the way that it should be, and
I appreciate that. And I actually have never told many people this. I am working on a couple of different things, but for your listeners or anyone, I mean, I really, if you ever just want to find out about what it's like to make a podcast and want to, pick my brain, like, please reach out to me. Like, you can email me at hello@Spokast. You can connect with Bobby. He can connect you with me. Like, I do want to make this space for everyone. And if anyone wants to ever just come and try it out or just talk about it, like about being authentic, like I'll tell you like what you need to do to start a podcast. Like I'm not afraid to like lose a podcast to someone else that's producing here in Spokane, or the library who's doing it, for free, offering their stuff for free. Like I'm always want to be a part of the community to tell people like how to like make this possible, because I've gone through the process of making a ton of podcasts, and they haven't all been hits, and and there's been a lot of trial and error, but like I think I've said this multiple times, like it's all about just making it easier for everyone. And even if it's just making it easier for someone to just learn a little bit from me, like I'm always happy to lend a mouth. I'm always willing to like just give some advice. Lend a mouth. Actually I was with my another life coach a couple weeks ago, and I've even as much as like all like I like to give out this persona like everything's sunshine and rainbows, like it is, but it's also like it is work. But I've found myself getting into like a lot of creative ruts. Like I don't create anymore, and I know all about those. And they actually encouraged me to, like, why don't you just do what you know how to do best and make some podcasts? Because like the one thing I will say is like whenever I make podcasts with people, I'm always relying on someone else's time, or if it's my wife, like I like her to listen to the podcast to give me notes. Say if I do a podcast with my buddy Adam, like he's helping me prepare for it. We have to put a time together. Like if I do the other version of Spokast with my friends, I got to get about 4 people together at the same time in this place. And so I'm going to relaunch Spokast Extra AF, which was a podcast I used to do with them, but it's going to just be my version of Spokast by myself, where I interview kind of people in Spokane and just make it really, but I want to focus on doing a more shorter style interview, having it be a little bit more fun with like some games. I like doing games and podcasts. Games are always...
Yeah. No, that's cool. I think, finding a form of entertainment during a podcast is smart.
Yeah.
I was watching... Drink Champs with DJ Khaled. The new one that just came out.
Yeah.
Like, DJ Khaled, man, that guy he is hilarious.
He is, yeah.
I was just watching like comedy. That podcast. Just they do this drinking game, and DJ Khaled just gets so wasted, but he's just so funny, He's hilarious.
I used to drink we used to drink martinis on my podcast with my wife, and those podcasts you like, oh, we're only at 30 minutes, like this podcast can get over shortly, and then we have a martini and we have maybe another drink, and by the time we're done it's like 2 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to edit a ton of this out. But yeah, the point of that one is just to have a creative outlet, and I've actually gotten to a space where in my life where like it's a lot easier for me to produce my own content myself, and and I really want to utilize my space and showcase what I can do as a podcaster and as a producer, and just make a fun show. This showcasing some of the great people in Spokane, and I got some cool people coming up on the first couple episodes, and I also want to showcase my clients, my podcasters who make this possible. So I'll definitely invite you on. Maybe I'll have you on episode 10.
Yeah, that'll be sweet, man. I look forward to it. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, I mean, I feel like we covered a lot. If you're still listening, thank you for sticking around for my story. And I get really long-winded. That is my probably the thing I'm really good at, is I'm good at talking. It's probably why I got into podcasting.
Yeah, it makes sense. It got nice there at the end. We had a lot more back and forth there. Yeah. But yeah, man, you gotta, it's all, for me, it's all about letting people tell how they got to where they're at, and that takes a lot.
Yeah.
That's what I mean?
Yeah. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to get here. Yeah. So. I've had so many, I mean, I've never I will say I've learned a lot from the guests that you've had on, and, I've never had to face much adversity in my life, and my privilege definitely shows, because I definitely have been given a lot, but I definitely want to make this space more accessible for everyone. And so, and I really want to give back to this community, because it's given so much to me, and I love Spokane. Spokane is my home. It's why I call this Spokast. It's usually why I have purple hair, but I don't have purple hair right now. But it's such an amazing city, and it's only getting more amazing and growing. And I'm excited for seeing chapter 100 from City Chapters. When I listened to your episode, one of the story I was going to tell is that I got to edit your. They never published the episode from Speak that you interviewed with one of the original guys there. Yeah. But when I was listening to it, I was like, oh my God, this is, I'd seen City Chapters around in Spokane, and I was like, and I'd seen your Instagram and your website, and when I was at Speak, actually, we got the zip ups that said Spokast on the back, or not Spokast, Speak. And I loved wearing that thing around. And then when Speak ended, I was like, God, I wish I could just take that off, because I do not want to wear it anymore. Yeah. But then I feel like when we first started, you gave me that jacket, and it's a little hot right now, but yeah. I love repping City Chapters. I love what you're doing in the city. And I think I think this podcast is going to be I love telling people, just wait, every podcasts are evergreen, especially this style of podcast where it can just get more and more. And as there's more content, more people will go back and listen to the old stuff if they're listening to the new stuff. And I just see so much potential in the stories that you're telling, and the community that you're creating here in our town. I think it's really cool, dude. So I appreciate you even, coming and telling me, asking me about helping you start a podcast.
Yeah. And we're just getting started.
Yeah, for sure.
It's episode or chapter 10, we're calling the episodes chapters to be clever. But we're I'm just getting started, and we're, of course, like I said, I do this to, just have these conversations, but we're going to continuously seek how to make this podcast better and better and better, and we got some heavy hitters that are on the list. I'm just, waiting until things are more dialed in. Yeah. But I feel like we're getting into good strides now. I feel very comfortable now doing this. I don't get nervous anymore when I show up. Yeah. I don't even worry about it. I just know it's going to be all right, when I show up. At first, I was a little bit maybe more nervous about it, but I do feel pretty natural behind it. And I feel like we're going to start really getting into the stride. And, you know, some things in my life have freed up a lot more energy for me to have a lot more creative focus. So that's going to start showing as well. But yeah, we'll put how to get a hold of Spokast and Brennon in our show notes. And that way, if you are interested in starting a podcast or even just knowing kind of what it would look like to start the podcast, you'll know where to find this man.
Yeah. And I will say this too, like if you're interested in coming on to the new style of Spokast podcast that I'm starting, like reach out to me there too, because I really want to provide another space, because it's going to be a weekly podcast, and it's going to be a short little 30-minute podcast, and just really, I really want to focus and feature a lot of the voices in Spokane, and and I'm just gonna steal all your guests. Like they're just
That's
all
cool, because I'm stealing yours.
Perfect.
It'll work out, man. It'll work
for
out.
sure.
All right, well, cool. That's chapter 10 with Brennon Poynor. I am Bobby J. This is City Chapters Podcast.
Makes my humble beginnings with winnings and chemists as far as I know. Whoa, sugar and spice, I'm everything nice. I give you advice, they give you a price. If you paid attention, you'll see what I'm kicking. I'm wasting your money by saying it twice. Shit is a game, you wanna complain, you blaming your L's on the dice. Mama just whipped up the cobbler, so I had to call it a reserve a slice. Whole fam gotta eat, closed mouth don't get fed. So all I had to do is speak. Now I'm talking myself from the word, and y'all been talking me disease.